All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're digging into the Harrisburg apartment market. Now, you might look at it and think everything's pretty calm, but trust me, underneath the surface, there's a huge shift going on. We're going to break down exactly what's happening, why it's happening now, and what it means for pretty much everyone. Yeah, from the outside, it looks like business as usual, right? Apartments are mostly full, people are moving in and out. But if you really look at the deep currents of the market, there is one major change that is quietly changing the entire game for renters, landlords, and investors all across the area. To really get a handle on where we are today, we first have to take a quick look back at what the market felt like just a little while ago. Because believe me, it was a totally different world. I mean, think back a few years. If you were trying to find a new place to live, you know what I'm talking about? It was an absolute sprint. You were racing against a dozen other people for a tiny number of available places. The pressure was really on. The whole setup was pretty simple, really. You had a ton of people who wanted apartments, demand was through the roof, but the supply, the actual number of places available, it was tight. And that created this classic landlord's market. This feeling that there just wasn't enough to go around, which of course led to rents going up and up. Well, that period of crazy pressure is finally starting to wind down. We're starting to see the first real signs of the market finding its balance again. And the reason for this whole shift, it really comes down to one big, powerful factor. Okay, so let's talk about the single biggest thing changing the Harrisburg market right now. It's a wave of new apartment construction that is, at long last, actually opening its doors. For the longest time, the story was just so predictable. You had all these people looking for a place to live, but there just weren't enough new apartments being built to handle them all. Demand was always ahead of supply. So what happens when there's that much demand for that long? The builders show up. Developers saw what was happening, and construction really started to ramp up all over the Harrisburg region. And as you can see, these projects aren't just in one little corner. It's a full-on regional response to a market that was starved for new options. And this is the whole point. Those projects aren't just lines on a blueprint anymore. They are real, finished buildings. This wave of new supply is hitting the market as we speak, and it's creating a level of choice for renters that, frankly, hasn't been there for years. So to really get the scale of this change, it helps to kind of step back and picture it. We're not talking about some complex spreadsheet here, just a really simple concept. So how do we wrap our heads around this? Let's just try a quick little thought experiment. Okay, I want you to picture a simple chart in your mind. That's it, just two lines. One line is tracking renter demand over time, and the other line is tracking all the new apartments being built. For most of the last 10 years, that demand line would be way up high, running pretty steady. And the supply line, it would be bumping along way down at the bottom. But now, all of a sudden, that supply line has shot straight up. It's surged dramatically to finally meet that demand line. That picture right there, that's the great rebalancing in action. So we've got this big picture shift from scarcity to supply. But what does that actually feel like when you're on the ground looking for an apartment or trying to rent one out? How does it change things day to day? Let's try a simple analogy. Picture your favorite grocery store, but for some reason, for years, they only ever had one single checkout line open. That's it, one line. Everybody had to get in that same line. The old Harrisburg market, that was the long single line. Everybody was stuck competing for the same few spots. But this big wave of new construction, that's like the store manager suddenly yelling, "I'm opening 5 more registers." All at once, that long line just vanishes, right? The pressure is gone, and the shoppers, in our case, the renters, can suddenly choose which line they want. They have options. So, okay, how does this rebalancing actually affect people's lives? It creates some very real changes in the kinds of decisions that everyone in the market has to make. So if you're a renter, listen up, because this is huge for you. You've got way more choices now, from brand new buildings to older ones that now have to compete a lot harder. That panicked feeling of, I have to sign this lease right now or I'll lose it, that's fading. It also means you probably won't see those huge rent hikes when it's time to renew. You're actually getting some of your negotiating power back. The power dynamic is shifting. Now, if you're a property owner, the rules of the game have changed. The competition for good tenants is definitely heating up. Just having an empty apartment isn't a guarantee anymore. The focus is shifting to things like marketing, customer service, and just keeping the residents you already have happy. Those days of easy automatic rent bombs are stabilizing, and some owners who are maybe thinking about selling might just decide to hold on for a bit and wait for all this new supply to get absorbed. And for investors, this is a wake-up call. The playbook that worked so well for the last 5 or 6 years, it's officially obsolete. The whole risk-reward calculation has changed. You just can't assume rents are going to keep climbing like they were. This new market really rewards patience and deep analysis, not just jumping in and hoping for the best. Okay, so we've looked at all these different pieces of the puzzle. What's the one thing, the most important thing you need to understand about the Harrisburg apartment market today? Let's boil it all down. If you remember just one thing from all this, make it this sentence. For years, the story of this market was all about scarcity. Today, the new story is all about choice. And that one simple change is what's driving everything else we've talked about. And that leads us to the real practical takeaway. It doesn't matter if you're a renter, an owner, or an investor. If you assume the market still works the way it did 2 years ago, you're going to make a mistake. This new environment rewards people who are patient, who do their homework, and who really understand this new dynamic of choice. But here's the thing. This balance won't last forever. Markets always move in cycles. As all these new apartments start to fill up over the next year or two, things will start to shift again, and that leaves us with a big lingering question. How long will this window of choice actually stay open before the market starts to tighten up all over again?